Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm their friend and guest, Alan Singer.
Dr. Alan Singer, educator historian, is once again joining us while we try to do a kind of Media Watch Thanksgiving weekend report card because we're going to be airing the Monday after Thanksgiving. So it's a report card on where the United States of America, our country, tis of thee, happens to be sitting in this day and age. And this Wednesday that we're taping actually happens to be the Wednesday that the verdict in the Ahmaud Arbery killing, the trial of the three men who killed Ahmaud Arbery came down. So this report card is going to deal with some of the reaction to that, some of the reaction to Kenosha, to see whether, what is it, glass half empty, glass half full, where positive, negative, negative, optimistic idealism or pessimistic cynicism, where we all are or where we might want to be. But anyway, Bob, you and Alan were paying really close attention to that verdict that came down on Wednesday in that Arbery trial of the three men. Arbery was murdered, so I keep wanting to refer to him. I don't even mention their names, like I tried not to mention the Kenosha guy's name, but bring us up to date and dissect between the two of you what they were charged with, how the jury came out.
Well, I mean, Eric, for me, this is like my rubber band week because I feel like I'm being snapped from one end to the other with these two verdicts. The Kenosha verdict, in which the shooter was found not guilty, to today, where we have the three men involved in the Ahmaud Arbery case found guilty of various felonies, not all of them, but most of them, which came as a surprise to me that the jury found it so clearly that these men had no right to stop Ahmaud for any reason. They could not claim citizen's arrest. They could not claim that there was self-defense. The jury found that there was no basis for shooting this man dead.
It should be noted, Bob. You keep saying jury. Both those trials had 11 white people and 1 black for both those trials. And so I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to bring that point across. Go ahead.
No, that's a point that we made in our last broadcast, that these juries were so skewed, almost all white, but in both cases, one person of color. And so it came to me as a stunner when I saw it come across my phone that the verdict came down this way. And Alan will have more details on what the charges were exactly. But the fact that they took the time to analyze the charges, and the ones that some of the defendants were found not guilty on were those where there was some gray area, and the jury apparently did its job. So to me, that was a surprise and a heartwarming one that they did their job in this case. But Alan, I'm sure you have a better take on this.
Well, I don't know if it's better, but I think part of what happened was that in Brunswick, Georgia, the 3 defendants forgot to cry when they were on the stand.
Right.
Which is what Rittenhouse did. So what happened is that Travis McMichael, who is the actual shooter of Ahmaud Arbery, he was found guilty on 9 charges, which include malice murder, felony murder, aggrieved assault, false imprisonment, criminal intent to commit a felony. Now, in Georgia, a conviction of malice murder requires murderous intent or forethought. So they are saying that Travis McMichael, he did this knowing full well he was going to do. And he has a history of racist comments. Now, a conviction of the charge of felony murder, and Rhodey Bryan and Greg McMichael were both found guilty of felony murder, means that the murder was committed, whether they intended to or not, during the course of another crime. And in this case, the other crime was the false imprisonment of Ahmaud Arbery. So I thought the prosecutor did a very effective job in this case and made it very, very clear to the jury exactly what was taking place. And the prosecutor just laid out that these people did not witness a crime. These people had no justification for stopping Ahmaud Arbery. They stopped Ahmaud Arbery claiming suspicion, but the only thing they could be suspicious about was that he was jogging while black. So the jury threw out the citizen's arrest because there never was one. And once they threw that out, they had to disregard the claim of self-defense. Rittenhouse argued self-defense, and given his pathetic appearance on the stand, it became plausible.
Yeah, there's an interesting point about the difference in those two trials. If you look at both judges, even though the Brunswick, Georgia judge said, okay, I can see that there's bias in the jury selection in my trial, but because the defense lawyers have propagated other reasons for striking these Black and brown people from this jury, I'm going to let that go because they have plausible grounds for striking these juries, so that becomes 11-1. But I'm quite aware that this is not that kind of jury. In Kenosha, judge didn't say anything about that. In Kenosha, judge also bent over backwards for the defense. In Kenosha, judge had the defendant pick jury slips out of a jury box, so he's choosing his juror. So even though you're right about crying on the stand, making a big difference in the outcome, my point, and I'm sure most of America's point, is if you have a biased judge, you're not going to have a fair outcome. As far as I'm concerned, this is editorializing, but that jury verdict in Kenosha was tainted by the judge on the bench.
I have to agree with you, Eric, because Bruce Schrader in Kenosha County, I almost want to call him comical in some of his explanations as to why he ruled things in and things out. And we don't have time for it today. Mm-hmm. But like you said, in allowing Rittenhouse to physically pull the jury out of a jar, you know, the theatrical aspect of that, the fact that he cried on the stand, the fact that the judge asked the audience to give a veteran a round of applause while he was on the stand, that's just out of hand for a judge to act that way in the middle of a trial. Bruce Schrader has been on the bench a long time in Kenosha, dating back to 1983. He needs to retire.
He did something else. He threw out the minor charge of illegal possession of a gun, of a submachine gun. That was important. And we see that in the trial in Georgia, because if you commit a murder, intentionally or unintentionally, while you're committing another crime, that's murder. Mm-hmm. And in this case, Rittenhouse had committed another crime. Mm-hmm. He was in illegal possession of a gun. And therefore, all his other actions were tainted by that crime. When the judge threw that crime out and said, we're not considering it, that opened the door for the self-defense argument.
Yep. You're right. And that's why we're in this glass half empty, glass half full mode. We had a decent judge who understood the law and how to deal with all the different aspects and nuances of the law. And we had another judge who seemed patently biased in favor of the defendant. And so we get two different outcomes, even though you got an 11-1 jury in each case. And so, yeah, in this case, in this part of the criminal justice system, justice seemed to have been served properly in Georgia, and justice did not seem to have been served quite well in Kenosha, Wisconsin. But Bob, you had a take on some reaction to that verdict on both instances. It talks about the president's reaction and different takes on it?
Well, I believe Alan has the two quotes up in the way President Biden reacted to both cases, both on Friday, the Rittenhouse case, and today, Wednesday, as we tape. And then I can jump in with what I just read on a right-wing news outlet. But go ahead, Alan. What did the Biden have to say?
Well, on Friday before our taping, President Biden said that he stands by the not guilty verdict in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. And this is a quote, "Look, I stand by what the jury has concluded. The jury system works and we have to abide by it." So he supported that jury. Then on today, which is the day the Arbery verdict was announced, the president wrote, "While the guilty verdict reflects our justice system doing its job, that alone is not enough. Instead, we must recommit ourselves to building a future of unity, shared strength, where no one fears violence because of the color of their skin." Now, I liked that the president said it's not enough. But what I found is that the president is hedging his bets as he appeals to his audience. I support the Rittenhouse verdict. I support the Brunswick verdict. He supports the legal system because it's working.
Yeah, and that you got those quotes obviously from news sources, wherever you got them from, be it a newspaper or
I think there was CNN had the articles.
there you go. When we have a verdict like this, sometimes I have to hold my nose and go to some of these right-wing outlets that don't do the real job of reporting. And this is how Newsmax reported today as a verdict came out. Numerous political leaders have commented on the trial, including President Joe Biden, who tweeted on the one-year anniversary of the shooting. So they're not quoting the quote that you just read, the one that he made today. They're quoting him from February, the one-year anniversary of the shooting. Quote, "A Black man should be able to go for a jog without fearing for his life. Today, we remember Ahmaud Arbery's life, and we dedicate ourselves to making this country safer for people of color." I see nothing wrong with that statement, but Newsmax goes on to say, "The comments appear to prejudge the guilt of the defendants, continuing a trend of Biden remarking on cases that had not yet been decided by a jury, as he had done with Kenosha shooting defendant Kyle Rittenhouse." So this is how it's reported in that type of media. And so part of America is getting this type of reporting, not what you just said, Alan. And that's a problem still that goes to the half full, half empty glass of America.
Yeah.
We're not getting the journalism that we need.
Yeah, the fake news cabal, because Newsmax and OANN are trying to outfox Fox, the real faux news, fake news people that we've been calling faux news. For how long have we been on the air, Bob? Well, anyway, for at least, we've been on the air more than 20 years. For at least half of our time, we've been calling them, without fear of contradiction, the fake news place, because they're propaganda, they're not news. And we tell people that all the time. And so this is not even glass half full and glass half empty. There's some people who just do a poor job. These people deal in propaganda.
They just grab the glass and they empty it. They just pour it out.
Yeah,
there's no attempt to balance anything.
but that's what we have to deal with. And that's why we're on the air. We call ourselves Media Watch because we try to at least keep watch of what these people are doing or not doing properly. And when they do it right, we tell folks that they're doing it right. So within the criminal justice system, there were a couple of other stories about glass half full, glass half empty. I'll throw one out real quick. A couple of weeks back, the BLM folks in New York talked about they're going to have riots in the streets and they're going to burn the place down. So I'm paraphrasing, folks. Let me not make them sound too bad about it. If the mayor-elect brings back his plainclothes unit to help bring down gun violence in New York, and Eric Garner's son got up on his own pulpit and chastised the BLM person for saying, "Excuse me, we're all in this together. We got pretty much he's saying there's an ex-policeman who's now mayor who may have a way of looking at these plainclothes units a little differently than the previous folks looked at them. So we're not going to run out here saying we're going to burn things down and start rioting in the streets just because he thinks he's got a way of doing this in such a way that it's not going to negatively impact Black and brown people walking the streets of New York. And I salute him for coming out and saying that. I agree that, yeah, we need to look a little carefully about bringing back that unit because of the way they acted in the past. But if there's one guy sitting in City Hall who should know how to look at those people to make sure they act right, it's the newly elected mayor who's a former police captain. So I'm throwing that out there, guys. What's your take on it?
No, Eric, the BLM person, and I don't remember his name, made that comment right in front of Brooklyn Borough Hall, which I walked past on the way out the house, you know, on the way to somewhere. And he said there will be bloodshed. The guy, you know, he came out and said that, and I'm looking at the TV like, no, we're not. And yeah, and Eric Adams, the mayor-elect, who currently occupies the building in front of which that comment was made, Brooklyn Borough Hall, came out immediately and said, no, that's, I forget the word he used, but that's inappropriate. That's not happening. I do have some faith, Eric, that Eric Adams will have a better idea of how to manage stopping and frisking if it comes to that than the previous mayors. So I'll give him a chance, but I'll also be having an eye on the process.
We're going to be watching carefully
what we had.
We're going to be watching carefully, but I'm not going to say don't try that. Alan, you got a take on that?
Take. Two things. I don't think the Black Lives Matter spokesperson was threatening that they were going to riot. My take was he was saying, if it goes through, there may be riots. So it was not a threat. The other thing is these special force cops have a horrible reputation. It wasn't just stop and frisk. What they would do is they would just hang around till the end of the shift in the middle of the night, and then they would just run around and arrest any Black person, Latino person they saw on the street. And they often would fabricate charges. And we know in Brooklyn this was happening. It's been documented that detectives were fabricating charges. And then what they would do is they would get overtime because they would have to hang out at the processing for hours after hours. So what they were doing is they were using this to rip off the city.
Yeah.
And that's why they were disbanded.
And I'm glad they disbanded that unit, for me, because they were rogue, for real. But that just because a unit that was conceived to work properly goes rogue doesn't mean the concept is not a possibly viable one. And so I'm coming from the fact that we need to at least give a little latitude to see if somebody can make it a viable, because with gun violence escalating, if he thinks he can do a plainclothes unit that actually does it properly, I think it might be beneficial to the city. But like I said, we will watch this very carefully, which brings us to the next topic. How much time we got, Bob?
We have about 9 minutes. We're doing pretty good today.
We need to segue over to the other topics on our report card. And real quick, like Gosar was censured for his crazy tweet and anime video trying to kill Ocasio-Cortez, taking shots at President Biden. And of course, the Republicans did not want to join the censure. Was it maybe 2 Republicans crossed over? I keep numbers, but it was predominantly the Democrats and 1 or 2 Republicans who said, yeah, that's beyond the pale. And of course, in the House, when this was being done, who was the crazy from Colorado? Boebert? What's her first name? Lauren Boebert, the crazy from she's the one who's actually being investigated amongst other people, including Gosar, for collusion in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. There are about 5 or 6 of them: Cawthorn, Gosar, Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a few others. That were probably, or at least they're looking into whether they were complicit in fomenting this assault on the Capitol. And she's charging Ilhan Omar with being part of the jihad squad while she's defending Gosar. And so when I say the glass is definitely not half full, it's half empty, when you got people like that in the House of Representatives representing their constituents in a poor way, it's terrible. But did you guys see the blowback she got? One of the Colorado anchors from one of the local stations, he just came right out and did an on-air commentary saying, we got to stop giving these people a pass. We always hold somebody to task when they do it one time. When they do this every day, day in and day out, we just accept it like it's whatever. And he basically lambasted her for what she was doing in the House of Representatives. It was just an amazing commentary. I wish I had taken notes on it because I saw it about a week and a half ago. And it was one of the best pieces of journalism I've seen. And like we always like to give credit where credit is due. Folks, you need to go look up the local anchor in Denver, Colorado. That's the main capital of, I think he was a Denver anchor. His editorial was phenomenal. So glass half empty, glass half full. So what else is on our agenda?
Well, I just want to mention that with Gosar, just the lack of any type of I'm sorry or any type of anything from him or the Republicans. I mean, there's a point where you can just be dignified and say you made a mistake, or where the Republicans can show dignity and say, we can't support none of that. So I didn't mean to extend this discussion, but it just, you know, in that case, the glass is empty. There's nothing there.
Oh, God.
Eric, I wanted to comment on something I saw on CNN. On a recent broadcast, Chris Cuomo interviewed comedian commentator Bill Maher, a supposed left-wing peril that is threatening the United States. And Cuomo kept on feeding Maher with softball questions and responding with, oh my God, facial expressions. Maher starts off by acknowledging, I'm not in schools and I have no interaction with children. But then once he acknowledges that he doesn't know anything, he then claims he has heard from people all over the country that because of CRT, critical race theory, kids are sometimes separated into groups, oppressor and oppressed, and they're being taught that racism is the essence of America. So he derided this practice as silly virtue signaling and accused people of advocating for curriculum revision of being afraid to acknowledge progress. And he invented a psychological disorder, which he called wokeness progress phobia. Now I'm watching the broadcast and I keep waiting for Chris Cuomo to ask Bill Maher to provide an example, any example to support his claim. But Cuomo never did, and Maher never felt compelled to offer any evidence. Now, on his television show, Maher promotes a group of contrarians that right now want to start their own college, where they will be free to present offensive ideas, dismiss objections without having to provide supporting evidence or answer to anyone. Cuomo never asked Maher about that either. And it's like the Republicans created this fictional villain, critical race theory, and Bill Maher is running with it, and Chris Cuomo let him.
Yeah, we have this problem with supposed professional journalists who are supposed to be knowledgeable about subjects that falls within their purview, because once you have a show and you are an anchor on any given show, any topic is liable across your desk. And so you and your researchers need to be doing your homework, especially when something is a hot topic, hot button issue in the news. So for him to give Maher that kind of latitude and not be able to cognitively strongly push back properly, I find offensive, and I find it a failing of true journalistic standards. But we've got this problem. Yeah, example, he talked about separating people in schools and using oppressors and whatever. I've seen stories of that, and we reported on stories of that when people are practicing their training, teaching. You've seen this, Alan, yourself, about teaching slavery, and they'll be separating these kids, and they make their black kids the slaves and make their white students the oppressors, and have the black kids be oppressed by these white students. And then it hits the fan, and then the school board has to call all kinds of meetings. I've never seen that happen in a critical race theory class, because guess what? There are no critical race theory classes going on in grammar schools, high schools, or even college, because as we've said before, it's just not. Did I just lose us?
No, we're here.
Oh, okay.
We're all here, and we have about a minute and a half.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just not. It's a fiction, and because we're out of time, we can't talk about how the fiction is continually being perpetuated about. It's really a fascistic approach to education now. And it's sweeping the country, sweeping school boards to the point where there's a lot of books being banned. That's a topic we meant to get to, but we've run out of time. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pick up this subject on, if not our next show, another show in the future, where, because this is not going away. You've got a library saying these is what the shelves would look like if we took off all these books that they want to ban, and this is what we do, and we let our patrons pick for themselves. But hey, how much time? 30 seconds.
We have about 30 seconds, and you're right. We'll hit those book subjects in an upcoming episode, but because they're deep.
So guess what, folks? I think it's 50-50. Glass is still half full, and it might be half empty. It all depends on what the next fiasco is going to be and how it's going to be treated. This has been Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony. Catch up to us on Twitter and YouTube at Media Watch EVT.
And I'm their friend and guest, Alan Singer. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving, so I'm thankful for the Brunswick verdict.
Yes, and by the time we air, hopefully we'll all have enjoyed a wonderful Thanksgiving. I believe Hanukkah will be starting soon. And so people stay safe, be good, stay healthy. We'll catch you the next time.